Hey everyone, Warwick's here. So we're going back into the Dragonflight talent trees. This time we're going to be doing a little bit of a follow-up on this. There's this website right here called Mythic Trap, mythictrap.com, that has done up some basic Dragonflight talent trees that are actually clickable. You can actually go sit down and make some builds through them. It makes some assumptions, so I kind of want to make some disclaimers here. Number one, the guy that makes Mythic Trap, thank you very much for your work on this. So some things to kind of keep in mind is that this is making the assumptions that you can like go back up the tree. So just a quick example, you put 2 pallets into improved bark skin. Actually, let's go further down. We'll talk about it in a little bit when I show it. We kind of go down here. Now, if something like this where there's only one way to go, we can definitely assume that that's an arrow going up. But one thing that is said here, if you look at the Wowhead post on this, some things that we want to keep in mind as we're going forward. This first one is like the most important. You must complete all talent ranks in the top row of the talent tree before moving on to the next rows. Basically what this is saying is that you have to, like, you know, for Guardian Druid, what we're going to look at today, like you have to get Frenzied Regen and a Thrash. Obviously you get these by default. You can't skip Swipe to get Iron Fur. Like, you can't do it. So you have to fill in from the top. And in the final UI, this is not in the Mythic Trap ones, it's not in any of the screenshots, as you can see here that Blizzard gave us, that there'll be an arrow kind of indicating which directions you can go after you spend a talent point. You know, obviously for things like Frenzied Regen and Thrash, you know, it says you get these by default when selecting the Feral Guardian specialization, etc. You know, these are not counted against the 31 points that you're going to get total at level 70. And then this is the big one. This is one that's kind of been debated amongst some communities that I'm in. Certain passive talents will have multiple ranks. All ranks must be obtained before you can move down the talent row. So that's something to keep in mind. So like, for example, right here, you have increased armor and physical damage. You can't just put 1 point here and then get Skull Bash. You're going to have to fill out all 3 points in order to get Skull Bash, as an example. So those are kind of some disclaimers that I wanted to kind of put out first. Again, this talent tree does assume that you can go back up the tree in order to get certain talents. We don't know if that's going to be the case or not. Otherwise, it would make for some very interesting builds. But what I wanted to do in this video was look at Guardian Druid, which is the tank that I've kind of had some reignited interest in, and kind of look at their talent tree for Dragonflight and see like an option that I think is going to be a pretty good sort of starting setup for the spec itself. We're going to look both at the Druid Tree for what Guardian would want, and then look at Guardian Tree for, obviously, for the spec itself. Now keep in mind, all of this stuff is still very early speculation on my part. I am in no way a heavy theory grafter of Guardian Druid. I'm someone that has made the spec in the past, have always kind of had an interest in it. The reason why I don't play it a ton right now is I don't really like the lean really heavily into Incarnation playstyle that is out there right now, where you basically go super massive every 3 minutes in order to push, you know, push keys, because you could survive it forever. I'm much more preferable to the Galactic Guardian playstyle, but that does have a pretty good ceiling on what it is going to be capable of versus Incarnation. So you know, but I'm going to get back into it, might mess around with it a little bit here towards the end of patch 9.2.5, just because, you know, I've got my goals on my Druid, I've got my goals on my DK, and I kind of not been enjoying Hunter as much recently. Not that I have, it's not that it's not good, it is, it's just that I just haven't been feeling like playing my Hunter. And Resto Druid is fine, but I'm in that ever struggle of trying to find a healing spec that I just find really enjoyable. Resto Druid is like the closest thing right now, along with Mistweaver. But I want to get back into Bear just because, you know, I think it's a little undervalued a little bit, and it's a spec that I've always had like a soft spot for. But enough of all that. We're gonna go ahead and go. I know a lot of places this is where you simp for clout, like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. I'll go deeper into that at the end of the video for those of you that hate when you do that in the middle of your content. So let's dive into the Druid Tree side. So we're gonna get Frenzied Regen and Thrash by default for being a Guardian Druid. I think this is fine. So our first talent point here, we're gonna go ahead and spend down into Swipe to get our AoE filler, and then of course grab Iron Fur is our main mitigation. Now you notice this is 6 points required. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 right now, so we can get improved bark skin. Now we're at 4 actually, because these two don't count. So 4, and then you can start grabbing, improve frenzy regen, and then 1 point, 2 points, 3 points. That unlocks everything that we have here. And then we can grab Skull Bash, of course, as the interrupt. And then Thick High to get the damage reduction. Now, this is not necessarily in order of what you're doing it. I'm just kind of looking at these talents and saying, hey, I think these are interesting. Soothe is going to be very important. Wild Charge I'm going to grab because I'm just a huge fan of Wild Charge. Stampeding Roar is the big utility. Getting an Absorb on Barkskin's Survival Instincts is neat. And you notice we still have 5 more points that we need to fill in, but there's not really anything else through the Guardian style of the tree. Now this is where you can actually start to pick up some really interesting choices overall for your Druid. Do you want to go more into a Kitty Boom style? Then you grab Rake, Rip, maybe Feline Swiftness, potentially Primal Fury. If you want to go, Owl Weaving, you grab Starfire, Star Surge, or maybe Moonkin form, and then maybe grab like this increased magic and damage, or you grab Hibernate. For me, I tend to be a little bit more safe with my Druid. I like to have, I'm going to really miss having Ysera's Gift as a bear Druid, so I'm going to go ahead and grab healing spells. We'll grab Redrew, we'll grab Swiftmend so that we can get Remove Corruption, just so that we can have both the Soothe and the Cure for, Curse and Poison. And then I'm going to grab this increased Healing Taken. Healing Done is kind of whatever. It helps Frenzied Regen, but Healing Taken is the big one for me. And that opens up our tree to move further down. So again, we have some interesting choices here that we can move on to. Obviously, we have here where you can grab Mighty Bash and Incapacitating Roar. I'm a big fan of Incapacitating Roar, so I'm going to grab it. And then I'm going to get Lakar's Teachings to get that 3% versatility while in bear form. We don't hate that at all. And then I'm going to grab Improved Stampeding Roar to get the increased cooldown. Now, here's where some more choices can be made. Renewal, obviously something that if you take Wild Charge in the current talent setup, you can't get Renewal to go with it. So this allows you to both get the mobility and the on-demand heal. This is definitely something that could be used if you do like really, really high keys or mythic rating progress. Being able to get both might be really good. Heart of the Wild, its abilities is not associated with your chosen specialization, it's substantially empowered for 45 seconds. I don't fully see how this is going to be useful. Again, Guardian Druid's smarter than me. Tell me if I'm wrong in thinking that this might not be as valuable in Dragonflight as it is right now in Shadowlands. So I'm going to do something a little bit different. I want the control for Ursol's Vortex, which means I have to take Wild Growth, which, on bursting weeks, I've definitely, we killed the pack, I immediately pop out in Wild Growth, just so that I can help out the healer a little bit, spread a little bit of healing out, get that hot going, just to kind of help mitigate bursting's damage a little bit. Something that I did very, very commonly in BFA, and will do in Shadowlands if, I get my Druid up to Guardian speed, so to speak. And so I'm going to take Ursol's Vortex because I really want Ursol's Vortex. All right. Now, again, we have some choices. We have 4 points remaining. So, we have some, I think, really interesting choices. Do we go back up and grab Cyclone? Do we grab Sunfire and improve Sunfire just to take that? It only leaves us 2 points for either Renew, Heart of the Wild. I think I'm going to do this. I'm going to grab Innervate and Nature's Vigil because I can help basically heal for 40% with single target damage spells. So Moonfire and Mangle, it's not going to be a ton, but it's something. Then I'm going to grab Renewal and Heart of the Wild. So you can see with this Druid Tree at level 70, we have 2 of the bottom choices. This one I don't think really works. Ursine's Vigor, it's a current endurance conduit, and I don't really think it has value there. Increased rejuve duration doesn't matter, so go there. So we basically forgo all feral stuff, we forgo all boomkin stuff. So the way my Druid Tree is set up is that I'm going to be basically in full-time bear form, and I'm going to have some utility like Innervate, Nature's Vigil, Ursol's, Stampeding Roar. I'll have an on-demand heal and Renewal to kind of help if I'm having to like do something away from healers, for example. Soothe Corruption, like I picked a lot of interesting utility that could be used. So this for me, at least initially, is I think the Guardian Druid setup in the Druid Tree that I feel like might be the best. Again, if Heart of the Wild turns out not to be as valuable, you can go back and stick a point in Ursign's come on, there we go, Ursign's Vigor, or you can come back up and maybe grab like, you know, Starfire, Star Surge, so that you can maybe Moonkin form, so you can do that. You can, you know, try to come over here and get Typhoon. I'm foregoing Typhoon, which I think is fine. I don't really use Typhoon a lot on Bear Druid anyways. So I just really like this Guardian Druid setup because it provides really interesting group utility, the good passive defensives that we need, as well as some good on-demand, you know, some out-of-combat healing through Rejuice, Swift Mend, Wild Growth, and of course Regrowth. You get increased healing taken, which is going to help your healers out. You get your mobility and Wild Charge. You get damage reduction and Iron Fur and Thick Hide. You have magic utility and corruption, Soothe. You get group mobility and Stampeding Roar. You have more defense and you have incapacitated. Like, you just get all this really cool utility that is really going to be very helpful, I think, overall. All right, now on the Guardian Tree side, I've set up a build that I think is quite interesting for me, to me at least. Again, this may not be the best build, but it's a build that I find interesting. So of course you grab Maul. I hope they do something to make Maul feel like it's worth casting in something other than off-tanking situations. But like in Mythic Plus, I barely ever use Maul unless I'm just taking very little damage and I'm about to rage cap. And even then, sometimes I'll just hit Iron Fur just because you don't know like what could happen. Of course, we grab Gore, which is the current passive. Basically, you get, you know, Mangle, reset, and generate more rage. We like that. Use Survival Instincts and the rank 2 to get the 2 charges, gives you more defensive flexibility. We grab improved bear form so that we can get the extra stamina and all the things that are in this tree that allow us to do stuff in bear form. And then we grabbed improved Mangle to get the bleeding targets bonus damage. Anytime you can get more damage in a tank, you take it. Here you get your first choice node. I take Brambles. I'm not a big fan of Bristling Fur. I think that it's, you know, it's on demand, which is good. Like if you know damage patterns, it's really good. I just like Brambles because, again, I'm looking to maximize damage. Now, we have 1 point required to get further down in the tree, so I'm going to go ahead and grab Berserk. But there are some stuff here in this row that I want to go ahead and still grab. Innate Resolve to get Frenzied Regen healing increase. I want to grab Ursoc's Endurance to give duration on Iron Fur in particular. And I want to grab Gory Fur to potentially help with Total Rage being consumed by getting potential, instead of 40, it would be, so 25, 20 would be 10, so like 12 rage off. So we're looking at like 30, 40 minus 12 is what, 28? So 28 rage Iron Furs. I think that's not bad at all. It allows you to build up, and if you can get one of these, that allows you to slap on potentially 2 to 3 Iron Furs versus only 1. Now, Infected Wounds you can get on weeks that you need to kite, but I think that there's, you know, between Ursol's Incapacitating Roar and potentially other group utility that's going to be coming in these trees, I think you can safely skip these from most weeks unless you just feel like you really need it. Which brings us down to the next row. We're going to grab Positive Outlook, the pun included, basically getting Thrash, chance to trigger an additional Thrash. This is, I think, in the Ursoc's Fury Remembered legendary now, so they split that off and made it its own talent. Down with that. Scintillating Moonlight, we're going to go ahead and grab that to get more damage out of Moonfire. Tooth and Claw, I'm going to skip this because, again, Maul doesn't really do much. It's, again, good for off-tanking, but I don't think it does much in the way for like Mythic Plus, which is the content that I focus on. I am going to grab Layered Bane just because I really like Layered Bane. You know, chance at 2 Iron Fur applications is always nice. You know, we take that. I'm going to go ahead and grab Twin Moonfire here on the next row because I need it in order to open up front of the pack, which I'll go ahead and put 2 points into because I know I'm going to need it. I'm going to grab Earth Warden because it does a lot of healing right now, as well as Berserk Persistence to get the cooldown, the 50% cost of Iron Fur, you know, to go along with Berserk Ravage, which reduces the cooldowns of Mangle Thrash and Growl. So you're getting kind of building up your Berserk to be the kind of potent cooldown that it is now. Now again, we're towards the bottom of the tree. We get some interesting choices potentially here, but I'm going to look at Reinforced Fur. Because here's the thing. The middle of this tree, I don't think it's going to be the biggest increase. Yes, you get more arcane damage, but literally the only thing that does arcane damage is Moonfire, which you're already cleaving and getting 4% extra damage on. So this is going to give you, 24% extra damage on Moonfire, so one ability. And then again with the Elune's favored, like you can make Moonfire a very potent single target nuke. So in some single target situations, I could see you coming down to these 3 trees, but I don't really feel like it's going to end up being like super valuable, because it only affects one spell when Thrash, Swipe, Mangle are all physical damage. Circle of Life and Death, I'm also skipping. I know there's potential for it to do a lot of damage through Thrash in particular, but again, with only Thrash and Moonfire versus like Feral that has 3 or 4 bleeds, or Moonkin which has 2 dots versus Resto which has 7 hops going at any time, I just don't see Circling Life and Death being that valuable, which means I'm skipping both Convoke and Incarn. The current Incarn, you're basically using the Berserk talents in order to get like the Shadowlands Incarn, so I don't see it. And Convoke doesn't really do a ton for Bear as it is. It's not a great offensive cooldown, it's not a great defensive cooldown. It's just super flexible. You can basically smash it on cooldown and you're gonna get value out of it no matter what, versus like Ravenous Frenzy or like Adaptive Swarm. Which means we're also skipping Improved Incarnation and Convoke, which I think is a very lackluster bottom tier talent. Which means that we're going to shift heavily into these other 2 trees, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a Reinforced Fur as well as Unchecked Aggression. The rage reduction of Maul doesn't matter. I'm looking at it for the haste. So you get 15% extra haste. 0 cooldown on Thrash and... where's it at? Right. Yeah, so we're getting... reducing cooldown of Mangle, Thrash, and Growl. And then we're going to come down here and get... Persistence, which gives you the Iron Fur reduction, and basically no cooldown on Frenzy Regeneration. So you can use it in a big plan as you need. Which means we get our 2 choice nodes here. So we get Ursoc's Fury versus Dream of Cenarius. Dream of Cenarius I think is good for more sustain. I want Ursoc's Fury though to get the Absorb Shield. I just think it's really useful, especially with positive outlook going on. As well as the Berserk stuff, like again Thrash just becomes like your main rotational spell. And then over here, Guardian of Elune versus After the Wildfire. Either get a group sustain after spending 200 rage, which is 5 Iron Furs essentially. But I'm going to take Guardian of Elune because getting that duration on Iron Fur is always going to be valuable. And if you notice, we have 4 points available, so I make some choices here. Reinvigoration versus Pulverize. I've never been a big fan of Pulverize, so I'm going to take Reinvigoration in order to get Rend and Tear. I've always enjoyed Rend and Tear, which means I have 2 choices. I have to take Survival of the Fittest or Soul of the Forest / Blood Frenzy. I'm a big fan of Blood Frenzy, and I'm going to get Rage of the Sleeper, which is the current legendary bears use. So this build right here allows for good defensive uptime with things like Bark Skin, and but also brings some good damage with things like Gory Fur, giving you good defensive value. Getting Reinforced Fur, Layered Mane, you're getting that defensive value. You're getting strong Berserk cooldown, Guardian of Elune, giving you some good defensive potential, Blood Frenzy giving you good defensive potential, and then you're getting this 25% damage boost with a Reflect on it that allows you to go there, and you're immune to CC, which is amazing. While at the same time, you're still getting reduced cooldown on Frenzied Regen, along with Rend and Tear for the defensive benefits, getting, Thrash giving you a 75% Absorb Shield for Mythic Plus, very good. You're getting, I just really like this tree. It may not be the most offensive tree, because you could go Tooth and Claw, Vulnerable Flesh, and Vicious Cycle in order to really build up your Maul in particular. But unless Maul changes to be something that you want to forsake your defensive support for, which I don't see happening, then I just don't feel like Maul is still going to be worth casting outside of off-tanking scenarios in a raid. So like when You know, for example, on current jailer fight, when your co-tank is tanking the jailer before the tank buster mechanic, you know, you can spend your rage on Maul instead of on Iron for crank out just that slight bit more damage. But then as soon as you taunt, your fingers don't touch Maul again until you're no longer actively tanking. And in Mythic Plus, like I said, you're always actively tanking, and so you always want your mitigation uptime to be there, which means that Maul is very rarely, if ever, pressed. So unless they make some changes to Maul, like I said a few times, they have to make changes to Maul in order to make it feel like it's a valuable button to push when you're actively tanking. I just don't see these talents that invest into Maul being valuable in a solo tank section. And again, I'm thinking of this from a Mythic Plus perspective because that is the primary content I run. I have been raiding, and I probably will continue to raid in the future, but my number one content has always been Mythic Plus. So this is the build. I'll link it in the description itself. Tell me what you guys think, if you have any other changes that you would want to make. And we'll do another video on Feral and Restoration. I probably won't do Balanced Druid because I don't know anything about Balanced Druid other than I used to play one way back in the day. There's a whole story to it, which I might do a video on my history of World of Warcraft, as I remember it. So tell me what you think about this particular Guardian build all. For those of you that are on Dreamgrove, or you have bare knowledge, I'd love to hear from you guys in particular. Or if you're just someone that has a lot of knowledge of Druid, I'd like to see what you think about this video. So before I do the kind of final closing here, I told you I'd simp for clout later in the video. This is going to be me doing that. Like, share, subscribe to the video, guys. Definitely really helps. Anytime you comment, you like, or you share the video around, you know, it really helps the algorithm recommend my videos a lot more, as I'm trying to kind of make my way in this crazy YouTube world. Some other news about my content stuff is I've added 2 more tiers of Patreon. So I have my normal $5 tier that I had started with. It is now considered my top tier. I'm still considering a bunch of different benefits that I can give to Patreons that are going. So if you are a experienced Patreon user, also tell me in the comments what you'd like to see out of a Patreon of mine. But I added a $3 tier and a $1 tier just so that those of you that want to contribute in some form or fashion but are maybe very tight on your funds can still contribute if you feel like you want to. Not required to subscribe to the Patreon or anything like that, but if you want to, it is there appreciated. I do have my first patron as well. Shout outs to Tomax, who is my first ever patron, subscribed at the $5 tier. So I appreciate you greatly, sir, for subscribing to my Patreon. I will do more to try and be more active on Patreon than I have been recently. So yeah, that's me simping for clout, guys. Like, share, subscribe. Patreon will be linked in the description. You can hit me up on Discord, hit me up on Twitter, hit me up on Twitch, YouTube, all this good stuff. So until the next video, we'll do Feral Trees next. So until the next video, I hope you're all staying safe. I hope you're all having fun. I hope you keep gaming. And we'll see you all in the next video.